Alright guys, let's take a look at some players now who over the last couple of weeks have either been underperforming or overperforming their projected rest of season value. Some guys who you might be able to execute buy low or sell highs on. We'll start with the underperforming list and some guys. Again, there are many players in fantasy leagues who go on player raters and player rankings and they refuse to do trades because of these numbers, and you can use that to your advantage because you can watch the video I did on trading last week and you can see the nuance involved in trading. Not everyone understands that, and you can take that sort of misunderstanding and use it to your advantage by using player rankings and player ratings to try and get some value off other people. Over the last 2 weeks, the 112th ranked player in that time is the Donovan Mitchell, who is shooting really terribly, 34% from the field in that time, 18 points, almost 6 rebounds and 4 assists with 1.7 steals. He's also subpar from the line, 76 and 24% from three-point land. So it's pretty clear why Mitchell is struggling, considering he's still averaging 18, 6 and 4 with almost 2 steals during this time where he's outside the top 110. It just goes to show you how much of an impact percentages can make, and he is on a real cold streak in terms of his shooting numbers, recording this before his Christmas Day game, of course. So Mitchell is a real buy low guy. Now, I thought there was a chance that he could sneak into the top 20 this season. I think I had him ranked around that top 25 mark to begin the year. He's nowhere near that, mainly because the efficiency jump that I thought he was going to get and the increased free throw rate, they haven't materialized. I think, reassessing Mitchell, he's a guy that, what we saw last year is very similar to what we're doing here, and he's more of a top 40, top 50 sort of a player, but at the moment outside the top 100, and if anyone's really panicking there and people do make short-term panic moves based on field goal percentage, you could have a look at and acquire Mitchell for a cheaper price, especially if people buy into things and myths such as sophomore slumps. The 119th ranked player over the last 2 weeks is DeMar DeRozan, who's averaging 18.7 points with 6.5 assists. It's not that he's struggling in major areas. He's not shooting poorly, 48 from the field, 75 from the line. It's the fact that he is literally hit 0 3-pointers during that time, and he just refuses to do that at all this season. Half a steal and half a block. And only getting to the free throw line 4 times a game on 75% shooting. We know DeMar DeRozan's game is based on your mid-80s in free throws and 8-9 attempts per game, and that's what pushes him into the top 50. A lot of people were pretty high on DeRozan this season. I wasn't, and I looked wrong at the start of the season. He's starting to come back to what I expected from him, but I do think he can be better than a guy that's outside the top 100, and that free throw rate will increase, and he will get some more steals than just half a game. So he is an interesting buy low guy, but we've seen his minutes decrease because the Spurs have been blowing people out, and that's limiting his production as well. Julius Randle, another guy who was injured and came back, but his percentages are really killing him, 59% from the free throw line. He's averaging 20 and 10, but those free throws, if someone's not willing to punt free throws, well, they're losing free throws because of Randle at the moment, so you might be able to acquire him at a little bit of a cheaper price just based on that fact alone. The Baptist, Johnny Collins, we all love John Collins. He puts up strong numbers, obviously. At the moment, he's dealing with that ankle problem again, but he's also outside the top 120 in fantasy ranks for the last 2 weeks, the 124th ranked player. He's averaging 19 and 14, that's great, but there's just very few defensive numbers, and again, free throws on large volume are really impacting his numbers, and the things that do impact short-term ranks a lot are steal numbers, block numbers, field goal percentage, and free throw percentage, and he hasn't nabbed a single steal over his last 5 games. He's only had two blocks during that time. Is that right? No, sorry. He's only had 3 blocks during that time, and he's at 62% from the line on 6 attempts. So they have dropped him down from being a top 30 player, top 40 player, to outside the top 120. And again, rankings slaves, you can use that to your advantage, especially when he's dealing with this ankle injury at the moment, which is a little bit concerning, I'll be honest. You might be able to get him at a pretty decent bargain. Bogdanovich, the 137th ranked player over the last couple of weeks. His minutes have been a bit down as he comes back from that foot issue that he was dealing with. He's only averaging 15 points with 5 assists, which on the surface is great, but again, efficiency is bringing him down, 41% from the field, no defensive stats. He's had 1 steal and no blocks in his last 6 games. That's obviously impacting his numbers as well, and when the steals come back up to normal, when the efficiency comes back up, then we're talking about he is a must-roster guy. He's a must-roster 12-teamer. He is a 10-teamer as well, and he's outside the top 130 at the moment. meaning that you can still get some value on Bogdan. If someone's got him and they're looking to drop, just throw him my way and send something back and see if you can get any sort of deal happening there. JJ Redick, the next guy I want to talk about. I don't think he's a high priority or high upside guy necessarily, but 143rd over the last 2 weeks. Redick isn't shooting his usual elite percentages. He's still at 38% from 3 and 46% from the field. That's great, but he's a guy that needs to be 42, 43% from 3 to really provide that value. The 16.5 points is nice. It's only marginally above average, and again, just a lack of defensive numbers, and the assists from Redick, which have been really high for him during his stint in Philadelphia, have dipped a little bit as well. Jimmy Butler's having some sort of an impact on Redick, but it's not massive, and I do think that you can get him, if you can get him for the lowest player on your team, I'd be looking to do that. Hassan Whiteside, 176th over the last 2 weeks, 11 and 11, 1.4 blocks, but the efficiency, 45% true shooting, 47% from the field, 23% from the free throw line. That is where the lack of numbers are coming from. It's also the fact that he's only getting 1.4 blocks and playing under 25 minutes a night. But if you're willing to punt free throws, the field goal percentage will come back up. He won't be sub 47%. The blocks will come back up. And if you're punting free throw, you don't care if he goes at 23%, although you're getting up to 50 or 60 would be nice because that's an extra 2 or 3 points per game. So Whiteside, the rankings are really down. People are ready to cut bait on him nearly every time that something goes wrong with him. So this is a really good opportunity, providing he fits your team, because you could actually trade for him and it might seem like a buy low and it completely ruins your squad. So it's all very dependent on the other players on your team. Jeremy Lamb is the 201st ranked player over the last 2 weeks. He's just not shooting well. 37 from the field. He's still playing 33 minutes a night, so that's a huge positive. 14 and 6.5, and again, lack of defensive numbers. There's a common theme here. It's poor percentages and lack of defensive numbers that cause players to drop 50, 60, 80 spots in rankings, and that's where Lamb is. He's a pretty solid top 100 guy. The minutes haven't gone anywhere. The usage hasn't gone anywhere. It's just those other numbers aren't coming up for Lamb, and when they do, then he'll be fine. The last guy I want to talk about is Aaron Gordon of the Orlando Magic, who is going through some significant shooting slumps of his own. He is ranked 223rd over the last 2 weeks, 11 points with 7 rebounds on 33 and 68% for a true shooting of 45%. Of course, he never brings the defensive numbers, but they're even worse than usual. He's averaging 5 assists, which is a little bit surprising for what As Gordon normally does. And those shooting numbers will come back up. He won't stick at 33% from the field. I'm pretty confident. He's not going to be that guy that we saw in November last season when he was shooting 44% from 3. That's not going to stick, but he will be better than this, and he is a must-roster guy. And he probably should be a top 100 player, just isn't there at the moment. For the players who are overperforming, Myles Turner is the 14th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. Now, I like Turner a lot. I didn't think he'd be able to get back to this level. He struggled to start this season. The reason he is so high is he's blocking 3.1 shots per game, which is obviously a huge amount, and that's really keeping his value there. But also, he's figured out how to rebound, averaging over 10 rebounds per game over the last 7. And if that rebound level can stick, then he's still going to be good. But I don't think he's going to be someone you look at as a top 15 type of player the rest of the way. Maybe he's a top 50, maybe top 60 if those block numbers normalize, because that's really carrying him. That's always the concern. When one category is carrying a player's rank, if that falls off 20%, 30%, then you could have a 20, 30 spot drop in rankings pretty quickly. Larry Nance Jr., the 17th ranked player. I worry that when Tristan Thompson and Kevin Love return, which could be, Thompson could be back in 2 weeks, that Larry Drew is going to stuff us around here. Nance is averaging 32 minutes, 12 and 11, 5 assists, 2.3 steals, 1.1 block on 57% shooting, and he's got his free throws up to 73%. They're all fantastic numbers. But Will Drew, who at the start of the season was finding any warm body that he could to play over Nance, when all these guys return, what's he going to do with him? So if you can get, I think, any sort of top 30, and you probably won't, but any sort of top 50 value for Nance, I think you'd do it. There is an element of risk there. Even if he stays starting and playing 32, I don't think he remains a top 20 player. I think he can be a top 50, probably a top 60 guy. But those minutes drop, the minutes drop is going to come. It feels inevitable. Now, I hope it doesn't, and I don't think it should. I just feel that it's going to, and that would be a concern for his numbers. Trevor Ariza really dominating in Washington over the last 2 weeks. He's the 27th ranked player, averaging 13, 6.5, and a massive 3.4 steals, and also massive for Trevor Ariza, 4.2 assists. So there's two numbers there that are clearly not going to stick. Now, the 39% from the field is terrible. He's also not a good shooter, so that's not necessarily going to change that much. It's those 3.4 steals and the high assist numbers from Ariza that's going to drop him back down. He is a 12-team league guy, but he's more of a 70 to 80 guy than a top 30 player that we're seeing at the moment. Monty Morris of the Denver Nuggets. You're probably not going to be able to sell high on him because no one's going to really want to buy it as a trade. But I thought I'd mention it. He's the 34th ranked player over the last couple of weeks, averaging 14, 3, and 5, 2 steals on ludicrous 59% shooting, including 50% from 3, numbers which won't stick. The playing time's also going to be in trouble when Gary Harris and Will Barton return, not to mention Isaiah Thomas. So Morris is a must-roster guy at the moment, but that could change at any point, and if you could get any sort of close to top 100 value back for him, I think I'd be doing that. Another Morris, Marcus Morris of the Boston Celtics, is the 46th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. 28 minutes a night, 17 points. He's dealing with a knee issue. I worry that the playing time, the usage, and the efficiency may not be able to stick for Morris. I think he is a 12-team league guy, but I don't necessarily think that he's going to remain there all season. So I think getting any sort of top 80 value back for Marcus Morris would be a good look. While Emmanuel Mudiay been surprising everybody. He is the 55th ranked player over the last 2 weeks, averaging 22, 3.5, and 6. Now, I think that the playing time is for real. Fizdale relies upon him, and he is a must-roster guy. I don't think that he can keep up a 50% field goal percentage, which is what he's doing, and that's keeping him elevated in that top 50 area. He's more of a top 100, top 110 sort of a guy. Fred VanVleet of the Toronto Raptors has really seen a significant bump with Kawhi and Kyle Lowry out. He's found himself ranked 62nd over the last couple of weeks. He's a guy that I think has got really huge upside if he was ever in a 30-minute per night starter role, top 30 type of upside. I don't think he's getting that at any point soon. But for now, he's putting up the numbers. He's a guy that I don't even think he's must roster at this point. But if someone's got him, or if you've got him and someone else is enamored by rank, again, the numbers are really high at the moment. High steals, good assists, heaps of threes, good points. He's putting up the strong numbers, but a lot of that has come without Lowry or without Leonard, and both of those guys are back now, so he's not going to be able to continue that level. Reggie Bullock is the 66th ranked player on the back of over 4 threes per game and 53% shooting. He does literally nothing else. And when those numbers drop off, the 50% from 3, the 58% from 2, then his numbers are going to fall. And I think he is a fringe 12-team league player, but any sort of value you can get back for Reggie Bullock, I think you'd look to do. Well, Bojan Bogdanovic is the last one I want to talk about. 84th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. 2.3 triples per game, 15.6 points. The numbers aren't terribly unsustainable. The field goal percentage is pretty high. The 3-point percentage is pretty high. I just think if you can get any sort of top 90 value back for Bojan, I would. He's more of a top 120 sort of a guy. But this is not a huge amount of value to be found there with Bojan. That'll wrap it up for my over and undervalued players over the last couple of weeks. Thanks, guys.